My name is Kevin Boylan, and I'm continuing my discussion with Bilhan Tuncel, who is a political expert on Kurdish issues and a writer for a number of universities. In the first part, we discussed the Rojava social revolution in Syrian Kurdistan, and in this part, we will focus on addressing the current political situation in Turkish Kurdistan. As far as I understand, with the situation in Turkey, it started when the HDP, which is the People's Democratic Party, that they started to gain seats within the Turkish Parliament, and then they had another election in order to try and get rid of that. They haven't got rid of it, but they have reduced it a little bit. And could you and since then, as far as I understand it, again, the Turkish government has used this has forced a breakdown in what was originally a peace process going on with the PKK, and to reinitiate hostilities. I just wondered if you had any theories as to what Erdogan's agenda might be in doing this.
Well, I've been writing for the last 5 years. I believe that Erdogan got a secret agenda. It is a very well organized secret agenda. Not just Kurds. I think Erdogan used the Western powers as well. Because Turkey is supposed to become a member of European Union. So there was a ceasefire between the PKK and the Turkish state. The Kurds was pretty well organized, and the society accept the ceasefire and support the political peaceful solution, stand up with the Kurds, not just Kurds, the very important population of the Turks as well did support the ceasefire and political solution between the PKK and the Turkish state. Erdogan had a very strong beliefs. If he could bring the PKK to the table, so he can beat the Kurds on the table. So he thought the political solution gonna be good political factor, which is gonna be giving him more strength to fight against the Kurds. I don't believe Erdogan never had a honest intention to have a political solution with the Kurds. So it took years and years for Erdogan to make sure he's completely on the power. So he used the European Union, he used the Western power, and he did play the same game with the Kurds. And it didn't work, because he called the HDP, People's Democratic Party, if you're brave enough politically, come to the election as a party. That was his own speech on the national TV to the population, Turkish and Kurdish population. We are ready for the political solution. If HDP brave enough politically, come to the election as a party. 10% threshold. It's not a democratic way to have a competition in the election. And the Turkey, the only one, got a 10% threshold against the Kurds. So the People Democratic Party come to the election, had a nearly 13% of the votes, and the Democratic and Justice Party,
Yeah.
the Erdogan's party, couldn't become to the power on his own. That's the case, and that's the reason why the Turkish state, the Erdogan's, changed his political situation into something different. That's the point when he didn't accept the elections. He didn't accept the elections. After the 7th June, the elections, when the Democratic People's Party passed the 13% of the votes, got up 30% of the votes, that's the time in Turkey 400 offices been attacked, burned to the ground, civilians been killed, and these people were working for the HDP.
Yep.
They never involved in anything in violence. And right after that, if you remember, in Turkey, very massive attacks happened to the Kurds. In Suruç, in Diyarbakir, in Ankara. That was all a concept where what Erdogan was thinking, to scare Kurds and to criminalize Kurds and to terrorize Kurds and play the same war game on the Kurds and telling the whole world, I am fighting against the terrorism. He is playing a game where he can terrorize the people, and he's giving the message out, the Turkish state giving the message out to the European Union, USA, UK. I'm not fighting against civilians. I'm not fighting against my own population citizen. I am fighting against terrorism. That's clear enough.
Yeah.
The Kurds come to the table to find a political solution. The Kurds had a pretty well integration with the democratic morals and values. They did cooperate with the European Unions. They tried their best to support the government so the government can find a political solution. But what happened in the end, the Turkey changed their mind and started to terrorize the people. Many civilians been killed. And the funny thing is about, it was said they've been attacked by the Islamic State. How funny is it? Why the Islamic State in Turkey just attacked the Kurds and their political partners? Why? If they targeting Turkey, if they are against the Turkey, the Democratic and Justice Party holding loads bigger meetings, millions and millions coming together. Why they don't attack to the Democratic and Justice Party? They did terrorize the people to make sure people not gonna vote for the Democratic and Democratic People Party. The terrorism came from the state itself. So that's the main issue.
Okay. Now, with the ongoing repression that's going on in the Kurdish region of Turkey, with the activities of the Turkish army and police forces there, I've also heard that there's a new organisation called the YPS, who have recently emerged, and are they related in any sense to the YPG in Syria? And are they anything to do with the PKK or not? I just want your opinion.
Basically, in the Middle East, all the Kurdish movements, one way or another, inspired by the PKK. the PKK mentality is in the every single part of Kurdistan, in Iraq, Iran, Turkey, Syria. Because the nation is connected with the PKK. We either accept or not. The nation connected with the PKK, accept the PKK. The PKK nationalized. Not just nationalized, multinationalized. Is a strong dynamic political power in the Middle East. So, the YPC, again, is not having any organic relationship with the PKK or with the YPG or YPJ. The attacks after the elections we were just talking about in Turkey, the attacks from the Turkish state start before the elections to the Kurds. And the Kurds was already investigating how they can protect themselves. The Turkish state doesn't run in a war on the PKK on the mountains just on its own. They run a war in the right middle of the towns, destroy house by house, they kill civilians, and they train military forward to the victory. So that's completely wrong strategy. That's completely unfair on the civilians. It is against the international human rights. It's against the it's a war crime. What is going on in Turkey right now? War crime. 35 days old baby being killed and held in the house fridge for days and days just because the Turkish army didn't let the family to bury the baby. The pregnant lady is being killed. The mother of the 11s being killed on the street, and her body was in the middle of the winter this time on the street. I read an interview belongs to his son recently. He said he was so worried the wolves on the mountains gonna come down the town and eat the body. And that body was on the street. That mother was on the street for 7 days. 31 people right now in a house under the attack, and the whole Turkey, the writers, the politicians, the journalists are announcing to the government saying, look, these people are dying, starving, and we need to save them. Every time the ambulance is going to save the people, the Turkish troops shooting the ambulances. 7 of them died, and we don't know nothing about the rest in the house. So if you go to the Sur, if you go to the Cizre, in the Kurdistan, if you go to the Silvan, most of places is not any difference from the Kobani. The Turkish state took the revenge from the Kurds because they were good ally with the ISIS, Islamic State, and the Kurds pushed the ISIS back, and the Turkey Middle East political interest been damaged. That's the main issue. The Turkish government right now taking the revenge on the Kurds. The YPC is not an organization being built up, hasn't got any history. The YPC is people same as me and you protecting their streets, their homes, and their families.
It's an organic thing.
I would say it is a reflection. Every human being, even an animal, trying to protect themselves. So the Kurds haven't got any other option. Kurds ready to come to the political solution. Every day, everywhere, every single chance, asking for political solution. But the Kurds are alone in the Middle East. So once more, we call into the international powers. Where is the democratic values and morals? Where is the human rights? Where is your historical principles? How come a group, a nation who are fighting against the Islamic State on the ground, the most successful group, the secular group in the Middle East, your own partner, not allowed to come to the peace talk in Geneva? What political views gonna explain this situation in the Middle East? So the world community, international community, should realize the Kurds are not in relationship with anything, even reminding the terrorism. Got no intention. So the attacks coming from the Turkish state, the Middle East states, and the Kurds has to protect themselves. Let's go before the PKK. Before the PKK, how many genocides happened in Kurdistan? The Turkish prime ministers, the Turkish presidents. I'm 36 years old. I witnessed myself on the TV many times. The Kurds fighting for freedom, and we did manage to massacre the Kurds 29 times. This belongs to the Turkish president who has recently died, Süleyman Demirel. So before the PKK, there wasn't before 80s there wasn't a PKK, but the Kurds always under the threat of genocide and always been genocides, always been massacred. So the issue is not PKK. The problem is nothing to do with the PKK. If there is not PKK, it is going to be something else, because people has to protect themselves. And 40 million people, even if in the Middle East, hasn't got a minimal progress. No statue, nothing. That's not fair on the Kurds.
Okay. Just if we finish off on one last question, which is just if people feel inspired to give the movement, the Kurdish movement, some solidarity and support, how would you suggest that they do it?
If they want to financially help the Kurds, we got an organization in London which is Kurdish Community Center. They can get the numbers from them and they can put the money into the bank, because there's the Kurdish Red Cross everywhere, and they can put the money into the account of the Kurdish Red Cross. That's what I would say. And in another way, they can have a solidarity with the Kurds in the European countries, put the pressure on the governments. We really need to put the pressure on the governments. Well, we should not be accept as it is, because the peace talks itself makes me very angry about the situation in the Rojava right now, because the Kurds in Rojava deserve more than any other dynamics in Middle East to take a seat in the peace talks. Just for the sake of Erdogan or for the sake of Turkey, isolating the Kurds is a big political mistake for the Western powers.
Yeah.
That political mistake needs to be corrected. We need a political pressure put on the governments and make sure they're on the right policies.